Hey Gators, so we're continuing on with resumes and cover letters, getting them right. As you recall, we just finished talking about freelance work and the overall job process, so we're going to dig into a little bit more here. So resume gaps. A lot of you have resumes and you do maybe have some work experience, educational achievements, skills, and so forth already on there. But sometimes life happens and we have resume gaps, and this is where people struggle. So this is something I really wanted to go over. Don't hide gaps or job hopping in your employment history. As a hiring manager will wonder if you were fired, if you quit, you were laid off, you lacked drive, your experienced a setback, etc. A good hiring manager is going to see those gaps, find no explanation for them, and think you are hiding something and hoping they don't notice. Guess what? They're going to notice. And it doesn't look very forthcoming or honest to just kind of wash over them. So you have to be a little bit more assertive. And these are the strategies I recommend. The best strategy is using your cover letter to explain the gaps. Again, you don't have to go on and on about this. Be concise and then move on to what you're doing now. These are some strategies and ways to think about it, maybe just in a brief paragraph, because again, you don't want to leave a hiring manager wondering what you were doing in the time between point A and point B. Do not badmouth the previous company or boss. Let's talk about that for a minute. I've actually had that happen with an interview that I was a part of, where the person in the interview said, well, the boss and I didn't see eye to eye. We had a disagreement and I basically quit over it, and I'm really glad I moved on. And you're like, wow, are you going to do the same thing to me? So as much as you may feel, redemption and relief from that moment, your future boss is not feeling that at all. So you always want to come off professionally and respectfully. If that actually did happen, you don't need to share that with them. You're not lying, but you can just say, it was just time for me to find a new opportunity. I was looking for something else that was going to be, more in line with what I had in mind for myself. That's a positive way to present, the fact that maybe this company or this boss really wasn't doing things for you that were working for you, without getting into conflict and disagreement and using put downs and stuff like that. Realize that most people quit their bosses, not their jobs. Okay? A lot of people like the work, but they don't like who they work for. So again, you have to come up with a way to describe why your employment ended at company A that doesn't set off alarms for your future boss. Okay? To continue on, maybe downsizing or layoffs occurred. That is something that you can talk about to an employer. That is something out of your control and reasonable. Okay? It's something that happens in the life cycles of companies. Again, you don't have to get into the nitty-gritty details about it, but that is something that you can say. So don't be afraid to say that. Put a positive spin on the situation by focusing on how you overcame the obstacle and emphasize your desire for a long-term fit. So again, you can talk about how in the meantime, you were doing this, that, and the other, or this helped you refocus on your skills and abilities that would make you more suitable for future opportunities and what have you. So that's something you can consider doing. You can even use this opportunity to explain how you keep up to date on the industry. This is a great time to talk about volunteer work or talk about skills you acquired or research you did, how you kept reading news articles on the state of the industry or kept up to date on products and services or strategies. So you want to kind of bring some of that in. Or you can say, hey, in the meantime, I picked up this skill or I did some of this work. It doesn't have to be paid work. It can be volunteer. It can be part-time work. That's perfectly fine too. But let's get into some of the more obvious ones, right? There could be many reasons for these kinds of gaps on a resume that are actually not related to your skills and work ethic. They're personal reasons. Maybe your partner's job required a change. You had to relocate. You had medical or health issues, or maybe issues that came from a loved one that you had to care for them. Dependent care, you decided to care for your children at home and took a break from working full-time or part-time. You experienced graduation and it's time to move on from your school. It's time to explore new things. you are doing some continuing education, so you decided to quit your job to pursue finishing your degree or pursuing a new degree or credential, or maybe you had military deployment. These are all things that, again, happen in our lives. Many of these things are out of our control. Some of these things are in our control. But again, these are things you can talk about in a cover letter that are reasonable. Okay, just make sure you present them in a way that shows you more as an asset rather than a liability. And by way of strategy, fill the gaps with other relevant activities or experiences you gained during that time. Maybe you were involved with volunteer work or community involvement. List any special projects, freelance work, or consulting you did during that time. And if the gaps are from several years ago, it was quite a while ago, and I kind of say 4 or 5 years or more, don't worry about explaining or hiding these inconsistencies. They're most likely not relevant any longer, but the experience gained at those jobs could be. So you have to kind of look at that experience and say, how does this make me more employable or more competitive as an applicant? So if it was years ago that maybe you took a break from school, or you went back to school, or were caring for children at home, or you decided not to work anymore to do other things, that's okay, because an employer is still going to be looking at the current situation, what you can do now, which is more relevant. So, but don't downplay or underplay the good, positive things you gained from doing that. So again, if you want kind of to talk to someone more about this, if you're in this situation, my ears are open and my phone is available. If you want to call and brainstorm, I'm happy to do that with you. Rounding this out, final decisions on resumes. Don't make it easy for hiring managers and recruiters to dismiss your resume and cover letter. Be upfront with them. They'll appreciate the honesty and will help you land the interview, which is another good place to explain your circumstances. It's uncomfortable, right, to say, yeah, I have to talk about some of why I have this gap or why my resume may be a little bit lacking, but that clarification shows a trait to an employer that you're willing to be honest, that you're willing to take responsibility for your circumstances and overcome obstacles. So those are all really attractive attributes for an employer. So don't underestimate that experience in an interview. Again, don't dwell on it because you don't want to create uncertainty, but it can definitely help move you on to the next phase, which is why, these gaps are reasonable, but why today I'm the person you want to hire. So again, interviews are great for providing further explanation. And you want to practice these explanations in advance. Talk them out, come up with your language and your presentation with a trusted friend so that way you choose the right wording and don't say something awkward in an interview, which kind of undersells you. Okay? Well, that is the end of resumes and cover letters. There are a lot more materials in Canvas that are going to drive you into the details of structure and strategy. But these were some big ones that come up when I look at students' resumes that they go, I really don't know how to deal with this on a resume. Chances are you might not have to deal with it on a resume. You can use your cover letter or your interview. But hopefully you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next lecture.